starting. Hi, my name is Stephanie Caballero, and I am an attorney. I'm the founder of the Surrogacy Law Center, and I'm also a mom via surrogacy. So I'm so excited you're here. Um, you know, all five of you or whoever, but whoever's here, thank you so much because really this is for you. For those in the industry, we know there's been a lot going on in our industry that is not always positive. So I'm going to be talking about a mix of things, so hopefully you're going to enjoy it. If you have any questions, we're going to save them for the end. So if you do, great. If you don't, great. That's fine. It's all up to you. So we're just going to dive right in. I know everybody's busy, and thank you for coming during the holiday season. So we're going to be doing this monthly, and it should be a little bit easier for everybody to join in January, February, and so on. So the biggie is the birthright citizenship case. Just to give you a little bit of background, one of the first things that Trump did when he became president was issue a bunch of executive orders, and he issued one on birthright citizenship. Which I was like, oh my gosh, of course he's not going to do this because you cannot change our Constitution with a few paragraphs, a piece of paper, and a signature. So of course it got immediately appealed. Yes, of course, Trump thinks he can. So it got immediately appealed and appealed and appealed, and it really never went into effect in the United States. Every time I go overseas, I'm definitely asked this question, where is it at? Where is it at? And I'm like, it's barred. It's not going forward. So the Supreme Court, this past year, heard a case on it. It was on, not on the merits of the case. That's what we attorneys call. It's like the merits. It was a procedural issue, meaning can federal judges bar something that the president wants, does, says, writes in the whole entire United States, because the whole entire United States did not sue. There were only 22 states that sued, not all the states, not all the territories. And the Supreme Court ruled this year, yes, that no, judges cannot make rulings that blanket the whole entire United States. So again, we thought, oh, well, the executive order is only going to go into effect for those 22 states. Well, that didn't happen, actually, because what the Supreme Court said was that um, not what was it called? Oh, they were, preventing it from happening. They said class action lawsuits. So class action, I've participated in them. Recently, I got a whopping $7. So yay to me. Where you are a member of a class. So what they did is they, meaning the attorneys, they changed it into a class action lawsuit. All right. So same thing, I tell you, the money involved in all this with the courts and the filing and the system, and the time and the effort, but this is what they did. Thank God they did this. So of course, again, all the judges ruled that it was unconstitutional. So I kept waiting for Trump to appeal because as we all know, Trump does not like to lose. And he waited a long time. They waited a very long time to appeal, but they finally appealed because when the Supreme Court heard the procedural case on can we have an injunction? They wanted the merits. Gorsuch said it, Amy Coney Barrett, we want everybody, almost every judge said, we want the merits of the case. Bring this case. They basically made Trump's Justice Department promise. So it took them a couple months. They finally appealed. So we're going to be hearing the case. As we all know, the Supreme Court is very favorable to Trump. So I don't know how they're going to rule. I've been asked on it. There was an analysis on it, lots of analysis, but I'm kind of hopeful because I read about how one of these analysts said that he really thinks that the Supreme Court is going to rule against Trump, that that's why they really wanted the merits of the case. Now, they could have rejected it because, of course, all these issues have been litigated. There was an 1886 case, all of them out of California, where I am located, interestingly enough. So basically, this person feels that they're going to rule against Trump. So they really feel that it isn't really a strong case. And so we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, for you who are overseas, and we all know that getting a birth certificate and getting a passport allows our couples to leave the country within a couple weeks. That is really why they want the passport for the most part. My Italians, my French, my German, because let's face it, when you are a US citizen, you have to pay taxes. So if you are German and you have a US child, that child has to pay taxes. So you're like, I don't want to pay taxes in the US. I'm a US citizen, but I grew up in Germany, I grew up in France, I grew up in Portugal, but they get to leave the country in 2 weeks, right? So that is essentially why it's so valuable for my clients who are overseas who are doing surrogacy, right? So I really and truly, if it comes to pass, birthright citizenship, it goes away. I have to tell you, we are going to get you home because, as you all know, especially under this current administration, we don't want you here. I want you here. I love when my clients come. I love when you come here, spend time with me. And the US should like when you come here because you spend money here. But right. So there will be a mechanism to get you home. Australia has already, said we'll get you home. The UK has already said we'll get you home. I'm talking to some immigration attorney in Canada. So we will get you home. The State Department will have a mechanism to get you out. So if it comes to pass and birthright citizenship goes away, like I said, we're going to get you home. So that's where we stand there, and I'll keep you posted. I'm watching it. The Supreme Court, is going to hear the case early in 2026, and it will probably be one of the last cases that they rule on. I'll talk about it after they hear oral arguments, because usually there's little signs as to how they're going to rule. Sometimes there's not, but usually there is. So I'll keep you updated as always on that. Now for some good news, a little bit. The Supreme Court actually declined to hear a case trying to overthrow gay marriage. Yes, we have gay marriage for all in the United States still. It was ruled in 2015, and I was so thrilled and so happy. I don't know how everybody feels about same sex. I'm like my kids. Love is love. My mother taught me that. She was ahead of her time, actually, for that. So that's how I feel about it. And really and truly, no matter what your opinion is, it really is about the children. The children need security. The children need to grow up knowing that their parents and their way of life is protected and they are secure financially, emotionally, physically. It's always about the children, right? So I'm so glad that it was denied. Interesting, the woman who brought it was Kim Davis. She became infamous because when gay marriage was provided for all in the United States, the Supreme Court ruled in 2015. She famously was a county clerk in Kentucky, and she was denying marriage certificates for same-sex couples. So, she tried, but she lost again and again and again. So, yay, good news on that front. Now, going off to a different country, sort of ish. We have worked in my office with many Brazilians. Love Brazil. And I have somebody in my office who is Brazilian. She's an attorney in Brazil. She's licensed in California. And of course, she speaks Portuguese, Tatiana Walton. And so recently we had a case, and so we have since found out that if you have Brazilian IPs, now I know this is very specific, but again, something to keep in mind. And they work with a surrogate who is not a US citizen, but she is a permanent resident, right? So she's legally here forever, yeah, right? She's legally allowed to be in the United States. You've got a citizen and you've got a permanent resident. I know, I think most countries have that. I know Mexico does. Actually, if your children are born in Mexico, you, as the parents, get to become a permanent resident. How fabulous is that? Anyways, back to Brazilians. So their children actually, because they didn't work with a surrogate who was a US citizen, they cannot automatically get citizenship for their children, Brazilian citizenship. Their children were born, this while we have birthright citizenship. So it's Brazilian citizenship, which is not automatically given to them via their parents. They actually have to go through a legal process now. I don't understand why. I don't understand the technicalities of it. I'm not a Brazilian attorney. I think this is something procedural. So just keep that in mind. I know it's very small, mostly people don't have a lot of Brazilians. I have more French clients than Brazilian clients, US, clients from all over the world, German clients, Dutch clients. But if you have Brazilian clients and you are a US attorney, please keep in mind that the surrogate that needs to be a U.S. citizen and not a permanent resident for them to obtain automatic Brazilian citizenship. So we were as stunned as our clients, and they're going to be working through that process. So just keep that in mind. Um, Recently, the New York Times, as well as the Wall Street Journal, have been doing a whole series of articles on surrogacy. So we are keeping tabs of these. We're trying to get some good news stories into the news because really and truly, mostly, it's good news. I mean, we help create babies, but there was this case of this woman who has had 13 children. And she so desperately wanted more children that she actually created a fraud. She forged her husband's signature. He has since come on board and he's fighting for custody of the last set of children. She just didn't want to stop having children. She apparently is a very loving woman and somehow she didn't want to stop. She's in her 50s. I mean, he was retired. I'm thinking, oh, dear God in heaven, I don't want more children, but she did. Yeah, yeah. People ask me all the time, you want more kids? I'm like, my children are 24 now, so no. My children might want children, but I don't want children, but she did. So we're definitely taking a look in our office about how to prevent this from happening because she did forge her husband's signature. She's very good at forging her husband's signature. I mean, I've seen my husband's signature for years. Can I do a good facsimile of it? Yes. Would I do it on a legal document like that? No, right? So she just, I think, just got on the hamster wheel and didn't stop. I'm not a mental health professional, but anyways, so really and truly, we're taking steps to safeguard it. At the end of the day, the children that she have are well taken care of, and she's fighting for custody of the last two. We'll see if she gets them, but it definitely brought to mind things in our office and procedures and practices that we need to strengthen. And that's typically what happens. When a case comes up and we hear about it, we're like, well, what can we do to prevent that from happening? Right? So we're going to keep a watch on that, but hopefully we're going to get more good news stories in the press because, like I said, that's truly the people in the industry. That is what we do. We help children and we help people have children and we help create families. So at the end of the day, but now we have something that's not so good again. So we have a senator out of Florida who has put forth a Safe Act for Children. It really is to stop people from China as well as other countries from coming here and utilizing surrogacy. We don't think it's going to move forward, but I know like Quad A, I'm a member of that, the Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproduction Technology Attorneys, as well as the ABA and Resolve. They are definitely looking at this and following this to see if it's going to come through. It was, I said, from China as well as a few other countries. I know I had a lot of intended parents from China, and I know there's been some articles about the Chinese. I don't have as many Chinese as I did before, honestly. Um, I think because obviously it's more difficult to come to the United States. As we all know, the United States and China are not getting along. We're not really playing really nice in the sandbox, is what I like to say. And I know it's really difficult to get money in and out of China, and then it's difficult to get money back because, when you hold money in trust at the end of the surrogacy, the end of the egg donation, whatever is left over goes back, right? Or they have to wire money here. So it's very difficult to get the money in and out of China. And then also their economy in some ways is not doing as well as it did before. I know that they have a really high unemployment rate, especially for young people, which is so hard when you're young, right? That's a whole other topic. I have 24-year-old children, and so, right, but that's a whole other webinar, right? So anyways, we're going to be watching this to see if it gets any traction. It was one senator out of the state of Florida. So like I said, we're going to be watching that. And then recently, the European Union, as we know, there was a special rapporteur who's Italian who issued a very strong negative against surrogacy and called it human trafficking. And then the United Nations, she presented it to the United Nations, and I think they're going to rule on it. I'm sure they're going to say that it is human trafficking. And then, of course, the European Union came through and issued a resolution against surrogacy, as they called it, exploitation. And I have to say, I was talking to a colleague yesterday who I love and adore. And I said, we, for the most part, in the United States, it's safe, it's ethical, it's safeguarded. We don't exploit the women. The women have, support from agencies, and there's actually really great organizations, companies that have been created by former surrogates to support the surrogates, to help them choose the right, there's actually, I'm thinking of two of them, choose the right agency. They have, monthly support groups. You can find out so much information about the agencies. There's mental health. There's, the doctor. Everybody's involved. We look at not just the intended parents as the physician does, as their patient, or as the client. We look at it as the whole system in the United States. We want to protect everybody. I do. Let me speak for myself. I want a great outcome for my parents, for the surrogate, the egg donor, everybody. But there was a recent article about women being trafficked for surrogacy. And I recognize that at other places it does happen. But we're not in the business for the most part in the United States of trafficking women. I know I'm a woman. Things sometimes aren't great for women, but so I get why the European Union is doing that. But at the end of the day, these women are making an informed decision and an informed choice, and I'm not trafficking them. So, right, but that's what the Union is doing. You'd have to be living under a rock not to know that all the articles that are coming out are kind of negative. I'm going to get to some good ones though, so don't worry, right? And then I'm going to try to end on kind of a happy note because I'm a glass half full kind of guy, no, gal, I'm a woman. That's what I am. I'm a half glass full kind of person. So I was talking to somebody yesterday who's not. I'm like, come on, right? I start with any day above ground is a good day, right? So that's where I start. Anyways, we're going to stay in Florida, going back to Florida. But this was a case about two women who used a sperm donor, worked with a sperm donor, not used, worked with a sperm donor to create their family. And they didn't do it with a physician, they did it at their home. Now, I did IVF, right? But I had to do it very clinically, stirrups, right? Doctors, physicians, needles, the whole gamut, right? It was the opposite of romantic, the opposite of an intimate, loving moment. My niece and nephew are pregnant. They just passed 13 weeks. She had a series of miscarriages. She never, ever, ever thought she was going to get pregnant. We are thrilled for them. OMG. But she knew the second she got pregnant. She looked at her husband and she was like, okay, you just got me pregnant. And he's like, what? Right? I mean, great story. Great story for the kids. They're going to be like, ew, mom. Right? But I get it for these women. They wanted an intimate moment. That's my point. They didn't want the sterilization. They didn't want the sterilization of this whole like doctor's office that I had. I get it. I had no choice, right? They had a choice. But the law says a sperm donor is not a sperm donor in Florida unless you go through a licensed physician. And they did not. So the sperm donor is the one that is petitioning for parental rights. And honestly, he'll probably get it. The women are on the birth certificate, they are married, but at the end of the day, the law stated that he has parental rights. He's a dad. They didn't work with the doctor, right? So they're fighting it. Of course they are. This is their home. This is their family. This is their child, right? So they're fighting it. And I don't know what kind of parentage the sperm donor or custody the sperm donor will get. I'm following the case. We'll wait and see. In California, we used to have that. Oh my gosh, my female clients were just so furious about that because they wanted an intimate, loving moment to create their family, with their spouse or their, girlfriend, partner, whatever, if they weren't married. And so we changed that not me, I didn't do it. The organization up in CLR, I think, National Center for Lesbian Rights. Oh my gosh, fantastic group. They've actually helped heterosexuals, right, with the laws too. So just don't think that they're just for the lesbians and the gays. They're not. They're there for equal protection for all. And they actually changed the law in California, so you don't have to work with a doctor. And if you have a contract, you can even have a verbal contract, but just don't have a verbal contract. Have something in writing. Okay. That's a tip from your attorney. So, right. So now they can have an intimate, wonderful moment in their house, and the sperm donor cannot petition for parentage. But in Florida, that's not the law. So sorry. But hopefully they'll change it. Go Florida. Go change that, right? And now we're going to flip to Texas. Unfortunately, I'm licensed in Texas. I love Texas. I love filing in Texas. The court system is great. I love working with Texas surrogates. I know they have a very strict abortion termination law. Thankfully, with all the testing that's done, the embryos go to 6 days. Right? The testing of the surrogate, well, testing of the surrogate, she's not part of the genetics. But with all the stuff that's going on with IVF, thankfully, we haven't had an issue. My Texas surrogates are great. So shout out to Texas, right? But Texas was involved in one of the recent scandals, and so they've become a little bit more strict. Some counties are regarding surrogacy. So we in Texas, all us attorneys, we are keeping an eye on it. Some courts have been requesting in-person hearings, which I'm in California. That would be very difficult for me to get to Texas. Not impossible, but difficult. If a lot of times my clients are in Germany, they're in other countries and other states, again, it would be difficult. So we're really working together to help prevent in-person hearings. As you may know, surrogacy is an uncontested legal case, meaning nobody is fighting. The parents agree, the surrogate agrees. We all agree that these parents are the parents. The surrogate does not want to be a parent. She wants to sign those documents. She wants to have a fabulous birth. Well, as fabulous as you can having a birth because it's pretty intense. Hats off to you women who've done that, right? She wants to do that, hello, and say goodbye and take a nap. Truly, that is what she wants to do. So really, it is uncontested. So we're going to keep watching it because for the most part, there's no hearing that's required because the court does get it that nobody is fighting. So we're going to keep a watch on Texas. They are rightfully very, very upset because they were involved in a scandal. And it was fraudulent. I know here in California, where I practice, they were involved in a fertility fraud, and it was really difficult on all of us afterwards. And they were rightly upset, right? Oh, something else out of Texas. Oh my gosh. So we're going to be talking about Trump and IVF because one of the things that he promised when he was campaigning was that what did he say that he was the the father of IVF, the creator of IVF. I don't know. He seems to think that he creates a lot of things. Anyways, these young Republicans in Texas put out a resolution opposing IVF. I don't know about you, but I had struggles, and anything that helps people have more children should be a good thing. I know there are people that have issues with the embryos and things like that, and we're going to put that aside for another day. But for me, IVF and surrogacy, I have my children. I cannot think of not having my children. So for these young Republicans who probably don't even have children, I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they were thinking that 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 Trump, I don't know, what is IVF. I don't know what they were thinking, but hopefully it goes nowhere. Hopefully people talk some sense into them. And now that we're talking about Trump, Trump put forth his, I think it was his Trump babies, and one of his platforms was on making IVF better and more affordable. And it was kind of a big nothing burger at the end of the day. He is trying to work with the drug companies to make the fertility medication less expensive, which, if you've taken it, is it still $5,000 per cycle per egg retrieval? I know when I was going through IVF, it was about 5 grand back in the day when I was doing it, right? It was about 5 grand. So it's pretty expensive, and it's not something that you typically calculate for. You look to your doctor and you're like, oh, okay, this is the IVF, egg retrieval, embryo transfer, this is the cost. And then you're like, what? The medication? Yeah, it's kind of it did for me. Like they didn't explain the medication. So he is making it, he says he's going to try to make it less expensive. So that will lower the cost, but we were hoping for some insurance help here in the United States. If you worked in the United States via surrogacy and IVF, you know our insurance. And if you're an insurance broker, God bless your heart in this field. Insurance is incredibly complicated in the United States, and we were hoping for some insurance help. I know when I was going through IVF, I was thinking about moving to Illinois, and Chicago, actually, because, kind of a great city, because they have a mandate, or they did that way back when I was going through IVF. So I was thinking about moving just for that. So we were hoping for some insurance help, and some help other ways, but that seems to be it from Trump. As you know, if you follow the US, we've got other things going on. But that's where we stand right now as of today with Trump and his IVF. And some other little bit of good news, the World Health Organization issued its first framework on infertility care. I'll be honest, I haven't read it yet. It's very long. Maybe I'll stick it into ChatGPT and give me a summary, and maybe one of these days I will read the whole thing, but I have looked at it a little bit. And I do like what they say about how infertility, and this is true, I do think it is one of the most overlooked public health challenges. I mean, I know when I was going through IVF and infertility, people weren't really talking about it. And, younger people are getting together older. And when you're older, so you have more challenges. But they did say, and I really do appreciate this, the director of the WHO, World Health Organization. Every time I say WHO, I think of the old rock band. Sorry, or like Who. Horton, here's a Who. Yeah, I have to, whenever I see it, I'm like, who? And then, World Health Organization. So he said, millions face this journey alone, priced out of care, pushed toward cheaper but unproven treatments, or forced to choose between their hopes of having children and their financial security. WHO encourages governments to integrate the guideline into national strategies to help more people access care grounded in scientific evidence. So, no matter what that framework says, I'm just going to keep that in my heart, and I'm very happy that that was presented. Oh, and some other good news out of Australia, and I just want to say what happened. The shooting was just, I mean, last weekend, people, was pretty rough all the way around. Between the shooting in Australia, the shooting at Brown University, the comedian and director Rob Reiner, and his wife being murdered allegedly by their son. And if you watched General Hospital, yeah, anyways, I won't talk about that. But it was a pretty rough weekend. Heart goes out to all those affected, truly. But in Western Australia, they finally, and I don't know, just to give you a little bit of background, Australia has been so tough, even on LGBTQ rights. Anything, regarding surrogacy, they had a ban on surrogacy, sort of like Italy, all over the world. So if you were a resident of, a certain province, state in Australia, no matter where you did surrogacy, it was illegal, even if you came to the US or Colombia, Mexico, wherever you did it. So they have been really strict. But finally, Western Australia, yay, has a new Assisted Reproduction Technology Act. It's going to go into effect in 2027. So it has been long awaited, like years and years and years. And it does cover LGBTQ. It protects the best interest of ART and surrogacy-born children. Gosh, I'm so happy. It removes discrimination. It opens access to singles and couples. So this is such great news. Sometimes they actually had limits on how long you could have your embryos, and I think it was 8 to 10 years, and after that you had to destroy them. So they just had such restricted laws and things like that. So it really is great. Donor conceived individuals have access to their information. Everybody has a right to their birth story. Truly, they do. I know my children loved looking at the pictures, of the whole, moment. I did take pictures of my surrogate, during the day. Come on, she was induced, and it was like for 8 hours, nothing was going on. So they have the whole picture, and they love their story, hearing their birth story. So we are so excited about Australia. So yay for them. And then actually getting to some tech thing, AI, because oh my gosh, I don't know about you guys wherever you're at, but AI seems to be in the news every minute in the United States. But researchers at Columbia University actually had the first successful pregnancy using an AI guided method. Sometimes men don't have any sperm, and it's really difficult when you find that out, obviously. And to get sperm from men who don't have any has been so difficult. Even when I was going through infertility, that wasn't our case, but our doctors would talk about that. And I'm like, you have no idea. And I had clients, that they tried surgery, everything. And so this is really wonderful that they were able to recover it using AI guided whatever they do. I'm sorry, I'm not a doctor. But it was AI guided. So that's great news for that, I have to say. So wonderful to hear about that. And then the New York Times, if you'd like the article, I'm a subscriber. I can gift it to you. So just shoot me an email, a DM, or whatever if you want it. But the New York Times recently posted an article about, does the fertility cliff hit at 35 for women? I know we've heard about that, like 35, you fall off the cliff and you're not fertile any longer and you can't have children. You might as well roll over and, call it a day. You're done. But they really have found out that that's not the case. And actually, the doctors just determined that it was riskier for a woman to have a baby after 35 than it was before 35. So that's how the cliff came about. It's sort of like how we get, okay, we don't have maternity. We don't have, what do you call it, maternity leave in this country. We have disability for the most part. There's no maternity leave. So how they determined 6 weeks for after your baby's born and 8 weeks if you have a C-section, so 6 weeks vaginally, 8 weeks C-section, is because at 6 weeks is when your uterus goes back to normal. Yeah, and 8 weeks for a C-section. That's when it goes back to normal size on average. So that's where we got that. So the fertility cliff comes from, well, after 35, your chromosomal anomaly. So, your chances of having a baby with some issues rises. So that's where they came from, the fertility cliff. But some women, right, 35 is not such a hard and fast number. So that was good news. And that was something slightly positive coming out of some newspaper. Right. And then Poland, actually, they do not have same-sex marriage. I know they do have it in France, as well as other countries, Taiwan too, by the way. But they recently ruined. Oh my gosh, who can talk? They recently ruled that they have to recognize same-sex marriages that are lawfully entered into in another EU member state. Does that mean the US too? They just said EU member state, but we'll take a win, right? Wherever we get it. So that's good news for my clients. Interestingly enough, when I go overseas and I go to conferences, I have to say I have had a lot of men from Poland. So just get married somewhere else, and then your marriage will be recognized. So, because again, like I said, it's about the children, the safety and the protection of the children, right? At the end of the day, we want the children to be safe, don't we? And protected. And then I'm going to end with something that happened in our industry. It was an agency that recently folded. The agency had been in business for 15 years. And I just want to shout out to our community because there have been some, like I've said throughout this whole program, there have been some negative press, rightfully so in some cases, about how things weren't always done in the best way possible. And it was a very big agency, well, mid agency, not super big, but it had been around for 15 years and folded in one day. The employees didn't get paid. There's parents that put money with this agency because this agency held escrow. And so it's devastating. I had a couple of clients with them, and the agency came together and we are supporting them. They've gotten financial help. I am taking on cases pro bono, as are my colleagues. And we came together in less than a week. It's awful that that happened. I think for somebody to do this, especially a former surrogate who herself helped families, is disgusting. People who are going through infertility are desperate. You work in this field, you know this. If you are a parent, you know this. And to prey on them is awful, beyond awful. But hats off to our community for coming together, for saying, yes, I will support you. I will provide pro bono. I will do work for you for free to help you through this. So I just want to say a big thank you to the community, right? All right, so that's it. I'm done. No, you have questions. Wait, do we have questions? Somebody raised their hand. Oh, does anybody have a question? Um, oh, I think it was you. I don't know who raised your hand, but you have a question? Can you type it? If you can, that's great. If you have a question, if you don't, then let's see. I have to put my glasses on because yes, I'm blind, seriously, but I don't wear them during this because it's glary and then you can't see my eyes. Oh, we have a question. Okay, let me read it. Can a court order search be completed on potential intended parents to see how many past PBOs they have had? Great question. Um, Los Angeles does this. I don't know. And I don't think they can do this across the whole United States, which I think you probably want to know about because the recent articles have been about the Mark surrogacy case. That was a few months ago. IPs they pretended to be IPs, but they owned the agency and they had multiple children. And then there was a recent article about the single Chinese who has allegedly a lot of children, sort of like Elon Musk, right? So I know Los Angeles can search. I don't know how far. I think they can just search through either LA or other counties. We don't talk to each other, right? I don't think you can do a statewide, so it would be a wonderful thing. And I think that's probably what they're talking about doing because, like I said, Texas was involved as well. And so in the fraud, and Texas was not happy. So great question. I'll probably keep an eye on that and see if anything comes of that, right? Because that would be a way to help prevent the fraud that has happened. And like I said, it's not common, but I'm from outside LA and I worked in LA and we have a saying in LA, if it bleeds, it leads. That's how the news is. So we're not going to talk about the happy, wonderful things. Oh my gosh, speaking of happy, wonderful, after a 10-year journey, we helped somebody have a baby. They wrote to my law office the most amazing letter. And they wrote one to the doctor and they wrote one to the agency. And I'm going to ask for permission to at least post part of it. I will never forget what she said. At the end of the day, that's why we do it. No matter how long it takes you, I want you to become a parent. And I know the professionals, if you're watching and listening, you do too. So, with that, whatever you celebrate, have a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. If you don't celebrate, just have a wonderful time. Get together with your friends, your families, your loved ones, and I will see you in January. And if you have any other questions, you can always contact me, email, socials. All right, take care. Thanks for joining. Bye.